Hey guys, I am DM Zone. This is Gamers Oasis. Let's get into it. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about something, and this is going to be hopefully not a jumbled mess. I'm going to try to establish what I'm doing with these crafting things. So let me go ahead and get into it. Let me break down a little bit about blueprints. Okay, blueprints break down, in my opinion, into what I'm going to call family groups. So a lot of this stuff is going to be like my interpretation of it, not necessarily something that it's established by other people and or by the community or by a website yet. I hope to have my own website at some point in time. I've been alluding to hints to what it might be called for a long time. I hope no one takes it, actually. But anyways, I'm going to eventually have that, and we'll go ahead and move forward with it. But let me go ahead and get into what this is a little. So, family groups. What would be a family group? A family group would be like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and metal engineering. Those are all components, and they tend to drop blueprints for each other. So if you're doing electronic engineering, you're going to have metal and mechanical engineering blueprints drop. So with that being said, you have to pay attention to, okay, so what are the other blueprints in here? Is it worth doing all three? You know, because if you're going to be getting blueprints, and some of these are going to be the rare blueprints, and some of these are going to be limited blueprints, which means that it could be worth just doing the limited stuff because you're already going to have the QR rating to be able to do it well. Is it worth raising all three of these at the same time? And how would you execute that plan? Basically, raise your engineering skill. That's a great way to get your foot in the door with that. You're going to have some lag between the ones you don't do as much. We won't get into that. But there are other family groups. Another one that's kind of isolated by itself a little bit would be material constructor. There's nothing else really within that uses a whole lot of skills, and it doesn't drop blueprints for other areas generally. There are some that are components that drop in material engineer and that type of stuff, but that's very different. And there are some non-texture stuff that drops in that as well. For example, the long tooth musk and the Eatmon musk, both of them drop from material constructor. But there are related professions that have synergy. Things like carpentry and tailoring both have symmetry with that. Then there are non-crafting skills that are related with synergy to crafting, like material designer and colorer. There's actually an extra R, so it's not like I'm stammering. It's called colorer. And those are used for applying textures and for applying paint to objects. So though they are not technically a craft, you don't necessarily craft paint. There are blueprints for crafting. They're just not in the color profession. They're in the tailoring profession. And you don't necessarily craft textures in the material design. It's actually in the material constructor. You get the general idea. They're related loosely, so I'm going to refer to these as family groups. Okay, so let's get into this just a little bit deeper. Okay, so there's been that change to nanocubes. Nanocubes now kind of fall in that animal muscle oil area. It's about 103%, 102%, depending on how many you get. If you don't get a lot, it'll be more. If you get a ton, it'll probably be a little less, close to that 102%. That's important because there is TT value and then there is the cost per click. Often when you are trying to figure out whether or not you're profitable with crafting, you have to figure out what the cost per click is. But you cannot forget the TT value of each click either, and I'll get into why that is important in just a second. So the cost per click would be like, okay, so I'm doing 100 clicks of animal muscle oil. Each one has one, so that's going to be, 3 ped. But it's 103%, so it's actually going to be it's going to be 3 ped and 9 pec. So it breaks out to be blah, 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 blah. And you divide that by 100, and that's your cost per click. It's going to be about 0.0309 per click is what it ends up being. It's not, or whatever it is. It's not a terrible amount per click, but there is a little bit of a cost to it. This gets bigger when you start factoring in that you need about 18,000 clicks to take a blueprint from QR 01 to 100. That's a rough estimate. There are some variants in that. Some point in time, I'll get into what I found with the blueprints I have gotten to 100, and I have taken I won't say quite a few. I've taken a few from brand new blueprint all the way to 100 now. But this is a little bit of a out of time link with what these videos here are for. Okay, so let's talk about levels. So if you're running a blueprint 1, for a tier 1 blueprint, a first level blueprint, you're going to have blueprints that fall between first and fourth level. If you're running a second level blueprint, you're going to have blueprints fall from first, because it can go down, all the way to fifth level. So you're going to get a wider range. It's basically the blueprint plus or minus 3. So, and that's basically how it works out. Now, you're going to find that you're going to get a lot more right at your level versus out to 3 plus. I don't know about going -3 because I've not actually done any level 4 blueprints to see if I get a lot of level 1 or 2 blueprints, or if I'm going to be more at that level 4 blueprint. I will do that. Look for that in the future season. I don't know which one. Things right now are very fluctuating. Because I have injected some money into this after the season, essentially during the season, kind of, sort of. You've seen the videos for it. And this season's been shot for a while. And anyways, let's just say things are very much up in the air, and I don't know where they're going to land when you get done. Okay, so if the cost per click is whether or not you're determining profit, and I talked about there's a TT value component. What does the TT value actually do? I'm going to be doing tests to see whether higher TT blueprints or per click blueprints produce more limited blueprints, or if it's just the same. Or is there potential for less? Or is there potential for other things to drop? My guess, if I was to predict, is you're going to get probably more shrapnel. You're probably going to get more residue, that type of stuff. You're probably not going to get more whatever the item is, but you might, which, sometimes that makes me wonder. I've really been focusing a lot on the components and with Material Engineer here lately, with the Material Constructor, I mean. But there are, like when I was looking at the constructor stuff, some of the stuff that's surprising me is it might be 76 pec for a click, but then the product that is produced, the thing you are making, is only a 6 pec. So the question is, do you get a heap of it, which would be awesome, or are you going to get way more residue? I won't know that until I get into that. So eventually I'm going to do my Burkite, Nesset, and Caldon runs. And I'm going to see what 36,000 clicks of that looks like in a future season. And then I will be able to know whether or not I can see in just the beginning. Because even Caldon is not significantly more. It's only 3 extractors versus 1 extractor. So it is 3 times the TT cost, but you're going from 0.01 to 0.03. It's not a huge, significant amount. Now, you run something that's 0.76, now whatever difference you're going to see is going to be more clear. So we'll see what it is. Also, you're not going to run 36,000 clicks of something that's 76 pec, unless you are just well into the wealth of the game, shall we say. But we're going to figure out all of this as we go. Right now, I'm just trying to break this down to some standard terms, and I'm kind of all over the place so far. I apologize. So we have family groups, we have cost, we have TT value. We'll see what that breaks out into in the future. This will probably evolve a little bit. I'm going to also talk about native blueprints and domestic blueprints and universal blueprints. So a native blueprint would be like a blueprint that is for Toulon, that you can get from Toulon, that requires parts from Toulon. That would be a Toulon specific native blueprint. Could you run it on Calypso? Absolutely. What would you get? I have no idea. There could be hidden nuggets within those. I have a feeling, knowing how the planet partners really don't coordinate that way and don't have control over these things, based on interviews I've seen, and how it's all kind of controlled by Mindark. Unless Mindark wanted to have something like that, a hidden Easter egg, they probably don't have that. You're probably going to get some womp womp type of blueprints. But I won't know until I do some testing on that. We'll do some testing and we'll figure it out. Maybe get an idea for it at least. Domestic blueprints are ones you get off of the technician. Those are ones you're going to find that they could be native as well. So you could have a native domestic, you could have that. Universal blueprints are blueprints that can drop anywhere and don't require a specific location to be able to make. For example, if you're going to make something with wool and an extractor, that is a universal blueprint. Same thing with fine cloth and thin thread, or hides, like animal hides or fine hides or soft hides. Those are going to be basically universal. When you start getting into things like cougar skin, for like the stuff, the cougar texture inside Rocktropia, that is a native to Rocktropia. You get the tab hides or the roaring texture, that's going to be a Toulon. There are things like that you're going to find. There's also a lot of stuff in Arcadia and Cyrene. I have not found anything like that on Monria. I thought there was, because there are Shoggoth skins and there are Yogg skins and that type of stuff. But when I actually looked into what those are used for, they're actually used in weapon crafting. So they're not actually even a texture. So no. But there are native to Monria blueprints. They're just not in Material Constructor. Anyways, getting away from that, we'll talk about more of this obviously in future videos. So, native, domestic, universal. Those are the three types of blueprints you're going to run into. Next Island's going to have a bunch of these. Ancient Greece are going to be a bunch of these. These are the same planet partner. I am wondering how they react with each other. So if you run an Ancient Greece blueprint on Next Island, do you get hidden secrets, or do you just get Ancient Greece blueprints? Or do you just get, like you're running on Arcadia, which may be a womp womp womp. I don't know. We'll figure it out. So a lot of where you can find where these blueprints fall as far as native or domestic, or excuse me, native or universal, is when you look at the book they are found in. Not only the parts that make them up, but if they're found in a Next Island book only, they're probably a native to Next Island blueprint. If they're found in the Calypso book, they could be specific to Calypso, but they are probably universal. But that second part is a little bit more back and forth. So an interesting thing about universal blueprints is they might be popped, or whatever you want to call it, specifically at a location. You might have to go to Arcadia to pop the blueprint, because that's how the coding is. But when you look at the parts and when you look at where you can use this, you're going to find that these things are available everywhere. I would still call that a universal blueprint, because very few of us will remember that this blueprint only drops off of Toulon or Arcadia 6 months after we have it, versus this blueprint can be used everywhere. And we don't need a fourth category, let's be honest. We have too many other categories. Okay, so a universal blueprint that is kind of unique in this way. I'm going to look more into if this is a thing. A universal blueprint that has planet-specific components needed to make it is now welding wire. It basically requires you to go get stuff from every plant to be able to go do this. I have so much welding wire right now from the blueprints I've already run and from this season of crafting, running this EP1. I will probably do a season where I just do welding wire. I don't know if I have to take out a second mortgage on my house, refinance it, or what I'm going to have to do to be able to afford it, and how long I'm going to have to prep to be able to do, let's say, 36,000 clicks of welding wire. But that is a significant amount, and I don't know if I'm ever actually going to do that. It's not a cheap blueprint to run. So I'm going to go into more detail on all these blueprints and the parts of the blueprints while I'm doing these crafting videos. I feel like people that watch crafting videos are going to be interested in this type of stuff, and there's going to be some synergy. I'm also going to mix in some hunting, because I feel like many people much rather prefer to watch hunting and know the clicks happen and then me talk about what happened in that crafting session versus just sitting there watching the bar go by, as I've said numerous times before, in a slow, normal crafting session. It's not very riveting. It's not very mainstream, shall we say. But let me get into how I want to identify it. So I kind of came up with my own thing. There's everything I've done so far is kind of like the construct that Mindark has put into the game, so that we have separations. There's levels, there's tiers, there's TT cost, there's the markup for the cost per click type of thing. I wanted to come up with my own stamp on this thing and kind of make it my own. So I went ahead and put a lot of thoughts down on paper. I read it, I refined it, I went back, I edited again, and I came up with some cute, I'll say, things to go with it. And here's 5 main questions I came up with that I feel like are important. And it's not just important for crafting, but for the components, and then going across that. Maybe I can get this to work with other things. So let me go ahead and get into what those questions are. So there is the complexity of use. Is it difficult to get the stuff for the blueprints? What level is it? Is it hard? Is there a gate on the skill? Like you have to be a certain profession level to be able to use or this item or this blueprint. You know, is it hard? And I'm just going to mark that since it's complexity with a C. Okay. I'm going to have another one talking about options. Are there many options for it? Is there only one real choice? You know, how many things are going on? And because, you know, I want to know how many things, how many options are there, I'm just going to go ahead and put an H there. Okay. So we got a C and we got an H. And then we have item markup. You know, if you're over here doing basic stone extractors and you're looking at that going, whew, that's 140%. And you're like, I want to look at what generic leather is. And you go look at generic leather and you're like, ooh, 200%. Ugh. How about superior cloth? Some random thing. I looked at superior cloth today. Yeah. No, I'm not doing that 3,000% markup. So is there a gate on how much the TT value is versus the cost per click? There are restrictions within that. You know, then you have to go back to evaluate, you know, is it important? Is it complex to be able to do? You know, is the item worth a lot? So we got I for item markup. Let's look at P. So we have the product markup. You know, if you're doing this and you're looking at basic sheet metal, sheet metal has a good markup, but basic filters doesn't. So there's a difference between the two products. Maybe if I do pay a little bit more for markup, it's worth it in the case of sheet metal, but it wouldn't be if it was basic filters. And I don't know the product that this would be, but let's just say you're making something that's a little eccentric or out there, or not a whole lot of people are doing something. I don't know, like some of these hides that you get off of the creatures off of Calypso. And there's a heap of them. No one knows about the fact they exist. No one is expecting to buy 323 to be able to put on an item, or the item level is so high it's ridiculous. So you have this gate there with skill. So it costs a lot to get it. The extractors cost a lot, and then the item actually sells for nothing because you can't find anyone to buy it. So you have product markups. So there's your P. And the last one, the fifth one, is scarcity of the item. Okay, so superior cloth extractor, just talked about that. I did a search today to see how hard would it be to be able to get superior cloth extractors. There were 16 available, and when I looked at the history, they're at like a 3,000% markup. Oh my God, am I not doing that? Now the question is, if I go farm that, is it worth doing the craft, or should I just sell them? Because there's apparently a really good markup on those superior cloth extractors. I have to kind of figure that out. Anyways, this whole system is called CHIPS, CHIPS. And there's a lot of things that go into it. I'm going to have like a little window that pops up with my chips, and I'm going to have a little rating. And we'll just kind of do like a little ranking video system. I hope you guys like this type of stuff. And then we'll be able to evaluate looking at, inferior cloth extractors, basic stone extractors, whatever. And then they'll have a chips rating, and you will know by looking at the chips, once we all understand the chips better, whether this is something you want to get into. And I'm going to have maybe like a blog site type of thing where I'm going to be incorporating my chip system into it. And then you're going to be able to go look at that blog to be able to see, yeah, I like this. Okay, that's a thing I could do for a while. Or the scarcity is a little bit of a thing. I have enough to do it, and I will do this. Or the markup of the item is so much, I probably should just sell it because the products are dust. There's nothing. So let's go ahead and so we're going to hopefully come up with this is my little thing I've done. It doesn't actually end there. It got even more silly. If you ever seen Monty Python, they have the silly walk, and everyone's got to be a little bit more silly than the last person. This continues on with the silly. So one of the things that's important to note is some of these things are seasonal. So things like Longtooth and Emon Musk, the buying and selling of the products for that, and then the use of the product that you make are both seasonal. It would almost be better to wait till migration is over, which we're in the middle of migration right now, to buy the leftover parts for it and then save that for next year and then sell the Musk and the Longtooth. And then if you have a year where MindArt kind of did like it did in 2022 with oopsies on the migration, maybe you don't sell it. Maybe you just hold that off. Or maybe everyone else is holding off and you realize the markup is really good and you just slide in there for that markup. Anyways, so some of this stuff is seasonal. So we're almost done. And I struggle to keep this video simple for newer players, but there's another thing I want to do with it. I talked about being a little bit silly. There's also an X factor. You may not understand right now, or we may not understand right now what that is, but we're going to kind of work through that. And what you want to do is you want to be able to predict why and how these things are the way they are. And a slight joke here. Also, if you want to be remembered, you name it after yourself. That's why you have these stars named after this, and these locations are named after that. So in this case, I give you ZONE, which is another acronym. It stands for X Factor, which in the words of George Takei, oh my, right? Then there is the O. Then there is those that are ambiguous, and sadly, there's never mind. That's because it's just TT food. And yes, I know it's shameful that I have made an acronym out of ZONE. So why this last acronym? This last acronym is really for, is it worth it? Is the X factor of all of this thing worth it? Are you hitting a niche that no one else is filling, or that there's just not enough supply for the demand that is there? An example of that would be the superior extractors. There are some blueprints in there that people want that for, probably not the same one I'm doing, but maybe it is. And they are just selling off the shelf because the cost per click is high and the extractor cost is low. So it is a place where new players are able to farm superior cloth extractors can actually slide in and get that. Now, why do I keep talking about this? Is there any personal reason why I might? Yeah, of course. I want to help every one of you guys make more money in game. Also, if I could ever have to buy superior cloth extractor, I want more people out there farming it so I can get it at a lower value. I haven't got my extractors yet, and I want to do a 1,500 point click or 1,500 click run. So either I have to farm 1,500 superior cloth extractors, of which I have like 30 right now, or I need to go buy it. I probably will do a whole heap of farming, and I'm not paying 3,000% markup. I'm just not doing it for 1,500 clicks. Anyways, so I hope you guys see that as that would be part of the X Factor, or the oh my, if you want to get into it. That was not a good George Takei thing. Anyways, so how would you use this in real life? I would say like things like basic filters. The tier 1 blueprint gets the DM approval of a 1-1-1-1. There's enough ones. 3 in. So what would that be? That would be a 1 for complexity of use. That would be a 1 for options. There's not a whole lot of options with it. You're going to think, no, there's tons of options. Well, yes, but none that people are using. The item has very little markup. The item has more markup than the product has value. So you're going to pay markup on the oil, for example, but then you're not going to get it back when you sell the component. So that's why it's all ones. You have a 3 at the end for the scarcity item. Sometimes people need that item, and there's not always a heap of it. And if you are in the right location doing the right thing, you could make a little bit of money out, is all I'm going to say. Now, how would that be understood? Would I do a basic filter blueprint? I did it personally. The reason why I did it is also part of the reason why I'm not free to play anymore. And I'm a low to moderate depositing player. It is easy to get into. It costs a Listerium ingot and it costs a little bit of oil. You can get both of those at the Acapulco, Pelago, whatever you call it, outside Calypso, out south of Port Atlantis. Okay, so the problem is everyone does it. The items that it is used for is not needing, the demand is not equal to the supply. The supply is way up there, the demand is kind of low. There's no markup for it. There's no scarcity to the item, which actually is a problem. There's no TT or there's no TT value, so you're going to do a whole heap of clicks, for not a lot of skill gain. People talk about the fact that you'll want to transition from basic filters to a higher level blueprint because you're just not getting skills from it. Tough. No one wants to have to transition before you get to QR 100 because the skills basically have dried up. If I was able to go back and I had the PED to do it and I was able to buy, let's say, wool at heaps, I could do wool and I would be farther along in that type of thing. It wouldn't be an electronic component or mechanical component for basic filter, But I could find something in mechanical engineering to do the same type of thing in. But something like wool, something that's universal, something you can get everywhere, something you can go farm, and then it can be made anywhere, it makes a lot more sense, in my opinion. So, never mind. Zone would not do this again. Do I have a QR 100 basic filter blueprint? Yeah. So I'm literally speaking from experience that this is something I would not do if I were to repeat this. I probably am not going to sell it though either, because if I ever do need to make basic filters, I have the blueprint for it. So it's kind of an invested long-term thing that someday may actually pay off. Okay, so this is kind of what you can expect from a new segment I'm creating. The season of crafting is going to be full of clicks. It's going to be full of hunting. It's going to be full of all these things. And to make it more interesting, I'm going to have something called item spotlights. Currently, the item spotlights are going to be on extractors. Every one of my crafting videos, all 30 of them for season 1 of crafting, will be a different extractor, or it'll be going in depth on a profession. So I'm going to have a chips rating, and I'll have a zone rating for the X factor, whatever you want to call it, and then you'll be able to know whether or not it is worth getting that item, or if it's going to be a 1-1-1-1 in, or hopefully it's going to be like a, I don't know, like a 5-5-5-5, like 5 5s, and then an X. And everyone's going to be doing it, and it's going to be super hard to get into it. And you may not want to get into that for a whole different reason, because then you're part of that gold rush. And I don't want to get into that in this video. We'll save that one for another video where we talk about what happens when something is just too good. Anyways, guys, hope you guys liked this video. I know it rambled a little bit. I apologize. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Hope you guys have a great day. Keep earning that ped. Bye.